Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and haunts.
Today's story takes us right here in Pittsburgh, or close by. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
Let's get into it. So today we're talking about the Dixmont State Hospital. And I was hoping that we could take a road trip to this because it's very close to us, but it actually closed down. And we don't want to trespass.
Right. Maybe when I was like a teenager, but not now.
And actually, there's not many of the buildings standing, so I considered going and driving past the lot, but I don't know what that would really do.
Right.
So, some history. On the hospital's website, it's listed as a former psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what the current phrasing is for this type of institution. I don't
know. I feel like we refer to most, like, I don't even know if this is the same thing, so I could be wrong, but I think most of the time it's just like around here it's like Western Psych, or like, you know. So
maybe psychiatric is correct.
Maybe?
Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge that might not be the most updated term.
Right.
So from 1859 to 1984, it was a self-sufficient hospital community with over 400 acres of land. Now, does this remind you of anything? Actually, it might have been David that did that podcast with me.
Is not Eastern State, right?
No, I can't think of the other hospital that we talked about. Oh, Penhurst.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yes.
I knew there was another one in there.
Yeah. So, similarly to Penhurst, this place operated completely on its own. And it was praised for this. It had its own food sources, its own electricity plant, and even its own water and sewage plant. So nothing was monitored from the outside.
Which raises alarm bells in my head. I don't know if that's accurate. Maybe they actually did something good with it, but I don't know. With the way that psych patients were treated, if something's running on its own without any sort of like verification.
Oversight, yeah. And initially, when this place was opened, it was actually praised for looking more like a park than a clinical campus.
Oh.
Because there were many outdoor spaces, including an outdoor canteen where patients could eat, and trails that the patients were free to walk on their own.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, and this is located here in Pittsburgh amongst many trails, but it was far enough out of the city and had 400 acres of land.
Right.
However, like any hospital in general, there are definitely mixed reviews. At its peak, Dixmont had 1,500 patients there, and there were reports of unruly patients being chained up in the tunnels beneath the hospital complex.
Oh my God. See, this is it. This is not good at all. I don't understand. Chaining somebody up does not change their behavior.
Right. It's like, look at these beautiful trails, but also don't make us angry or you'll never see the sunlight again.
Yes, and I always think that's ridiculous because these are psych patients. Of course they're going to act out like there's things that, you know what I mean? Like, it's not their fault. They're trying.
Right. And so again, this place was initially praised for good treatment comparatively to other hospitals at the time. And this charge was led by Dorothea Dix, whom Dixmont is named after.
Okay.
And she preferred the British version of healthcare and modeled this hospital after that. The hospital has numerous murals painted by patients as appreciation for her, actually. So whether they were coerced into doing this or they did it out of love for her, there are murals, or were murals rather. And following World War I, it was such a coveted hospital that they were actually forced to pause admissions because people would drive from all over the country to bring patients here.
Oh, wow. All right.
Right, which makes you think it would be good, but who really knows the reality?
Yeah.
But having to stop new admissions began the beginning of the hospital's financial troubles because they didn't have new streams of income. So as they wanted to grow, they only had the pay for the patients that were already there.
Right.
As a result, the facilities became obsolete and needed repair, but there was no money to do so. So even when patients would pass away and they would have an open space, no one wanted to come there anymore because it wasn't as nice.
Gotcha.
prior to the 1950s, over 1,300 patients had died there and were buried on the grounds.
That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people.
I mean,
and
I know they had 400 acres, is it? But that is a lot.
But 1,300 patients in 100 years. I guess that's only 13 patients a year.
Okay.
But it still feels kind of like a lot.
Yeah, it does.
But I guess percentage-wise, it's not if they had 1,500 patients at a time.
Right.
So in the 1950s, there was a boost of income, and they constructed additional buildings to try to modernize the campus and get people more interested in coming. However, part of trying to appeal to people was implementing modern treatments and shifting away from this British version of healthcare. And that included the use of antipsychotic medications, electroshock therapy, and lobotomies. All of these are known to regularly lead to patients being unable to care for themselves during and after treatment.
Right.
So here starts the real decline.
Yes.
There were patients who complained of abuse and claimed that people without any illness or condition were put there and not allowed to leave.
Oh.
So you start to question, the 1,500 patients.
Right.
The hospital announced a planned closure in 1972, but stayed open due to public outcry and concern for the placement of the patients. And that does make sense, I guess. If you have 1,500 patients, you can't just shut down without relocating.
Right. I mean, that seems like at least a year or two process of relocating every single one of the patients before you can close down.
You would think, but it took them 12.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. And it closed in 1984, and it was rumored that some patients were released to run free through the streets. But people say that this is due to the locals' dislike of the property in general.
Okay.
In 1995, there was a fire that burnt down multiple buildings, and various companies bought parcels of land, notably Walmart, but no one has developed the land, and only one crumbling building stands on the property now. So, that's the history. Now to look into the ghosts. So during the demolition period, when Walmart was trying to develop this, there were reports of the construction workers seeing apparitions walking along the grounds or peering out of the windows of the standing buildings. And every time they saw a person, it was listed as a security concern. So demolition had to be paused at times.
Oh.
Yeah, so, if the spirits really don't want the building knocked down and they just keep appearing in the window, it's going to cause significant delays.
Right.
There was also a large landslide that happened during the demolition that many claim was the work of the spirits that reside there, not wanting their home to be knocked down.
Yeah.
Especially the spirits of people that were buried on the land.
Well, and that makes sense. It's tough because even if it was not a great home, it was their home. That was the only thing they really knew. That makes perfect sense to me that they wouldn't want it to turn into a Walmart.
And nothing good ever comes of moving bodies.
We've talked about that.
Yeah. And, these people, dating back to 1850, these people's families, how are you going to track them down? You can't possibly. So what are you going to do with the remains?
Yeah, that's also true.
There have been a number of investigations here, both before and after demolition, and investigators captured the words pain and dead during recordings walking through the cemetery on site.
Yeah.
Additionally, there are reports of high EVP readings in various buildings, on the location of previous buildings, and again, specifically in that cemetery. So it seems that a lot of the people that were buried there are among the most active.
Right.
One of the most notable ghosts that has appeared in many accounts is a man that guards the morgue. He appears to only some people and stands in the doorway as if he wants to block entry. And the thought is he is either a patient that wants to protect a friend, or he was a worker that was placed there to prevent patients from entering the morgue.
Oh.
So, either way, this hospital was featured on an episode of The Scariest Places on Earth, and the investigators brought a psychic on the grounds with them to do the investigation.
Well,
And
that's cool. I like when they bring mediums or psychics on with them.
yeah, I think it's cool, but overall, I'm not a fan of the show, and I'll get to why.
Okay.
So the psychic I did like his portion. He walked around, but it was very brief that he was on the show. And as he was walking through to the morgue, he said that there was a man that was standing in his way and blocking him, and that the man really did not want him to enter the morgue, but he couldn't identify the reason or who the man was.
Okay.
And they also connected to a clip of a visitor that had been interviewed who said he also saw this man by the morgue, and that he felt an icy blast when trying to enter the morgue.
Oh.
And they snap a few pictures around the morgue, and it does show a large cloud of mist. So that could be indicative of the spirit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's where I feel like it starts to lose credibility. You know, I would think that a TV show named The Scariest Places on Earth would have like an all-star cast.
Right.
The next people that they interview is a group of journalism students.
Oh.
So, kind of interesting. These people are like 19, 20.
Right.
And not to say anything about that age, but they're journalism students. You know, they're not even history students that know the history of it.
Yeah.
But they're there to do investigative journalism, which I guess, okay. So they're featured on the show, and the first part of the campus that they tour is the tunnels underneath the hospital. Here, as they're walking through, they experience pieces of wall falling off and the sound of clanks of metal. Now, I thought a lot about this, and I thought, it's a crumbling building. The pieces of wall could be falling off all the time, but what are the odds that multiple pieces fall off while they're there? Because if it was actually crumbling at that rate, the tunnels would have just crumbled.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like, you know, if maybe one piece had fallen, I'd be like, okay, you know, like
Right.
that could have just been the old building. But if multiple pieces were falling, I agree, at some point the whole thing would just deteriorate.
Right. And the clanking of metal is also interesting because there's not much left in the tunnels from the looks of it.
Yeah.
It's pretty much just empty. They ask the ghosts various questions, and one that they ask is, were you tortured here? And the recorder captured a disembodied voice saying so much pain.
Oh no.
I know. And it was interesting because, you know, they are, of course, amateur journalism students compared to the psychic, but they did things that we see on a lot of shows, like record everything that was happening with a video camera. Mm-hmm. They had one person taking photos, and then they were also recording auditory, of course. So I guess they have more credibility than I originally would give them.
Yeah.
So they then go to the morgue, and when they enter the morgue, it's pretty much all together still, meaning they have all of the metal slabs. They have like I really don't know what the name is, like the cabinets where they store the bodies. They have the curtains that were used to separate out where the bodies were prepared. So everything's still there at the time of filming. And it was produced in the early 2000s, so it was before a lot of the demolition.
Right.
When they enter the room, they see the curtains moving, and there's no known cause. Although, I will say, from a skeptical lens, they did see bats earlier in the episode, so I think I personally would have attributed it to that or another creature.
Ah, okay.
But one of the students, Justin, lays down on a morgue slab to try to contact the ghosts. Immediate when he... I know.
He himself
Yes.
laid down on a morgue slab.
Yes.
Ooh, no.
I know. I'm someone that's like very interested... I'm not going to say interested in death. I'm someone that's very death positive and very interested in ghosts, and I don't think I would even do that.
No, I don't know why, and maybe it was not, I don't think the intent was to be, but that seems like if somebody is laying there, if their body was laid there, you know, it just seems like disruptive.
Yeah, I just think
bit.
it is not the choice I would make.
No. Also, it's terrifying. Why would you
Right.
want to do that?
And even scarier because immediately when he lays down, they hear metal clanging, but they can't identify where it's coming from.
Ooh.
But you can see that the rest of the students are looking at him and clearly not causing the sound themselves.
Yeah.
He says that he experiences a rush of air and that the pressure on his lungs became so great that it was hard for him to breathe. He also feels the sensation of water dripping on his head and neck, so they pull him up very quickly and he is visibly shaken for the rest of the episode.
And that makes sense to me.
I know. And that gives it some credit to me. It's easy to say, oh, I saw a ghost, but his very physical reactions and the fact that it affects him for the rest of the episode gives it some credit in my eyes.
Yes, absolutely.
So the TV show, like I said, was produced in the early 2000s. And again, I don't know about giving it credit because they only had the psychic and then the rest were just people. And this isn't to say that regular people can't have paranormal experiences, but I personally prefer, quote, experts in the field. Locals have said that the land is evil and so haunted that no one will ever build on it again. But we'll have to see what the future holds because it's still undeveloped land and 400 acres is a lot, especially pretty close to the city.
Yeah, and I wonder if it will continue to be like a safety issue if the spirits keep showing up,
Right.
Because that's interesting. Even if we want, not we, I wouldn't, but even if people do want to build on it, it's just kind of, it'd be interesting to see if they could get it done.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of it is or was tied to the physical buildings themselves, like the actual morgue, versus just the land. Like, what if you build apartments on that and every time someone lays in their bed they have the same reaction that the student Justin did?
Yeah, that would not be great.
We'll have to see. So answering the question, would you visit this place? I personally would not go for many reasons. One, it's trespassing and we're not here to break the law. But two, it seems like every ghost here is negative.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do not have an interest in going just because they're clearly disturbed. So it's a respect thing too. But also I would be terrified the whole time, even if we went in the daytime because it's not a functioning building. So we would still be in the dark.
Yeah, and landslides caused by spirits or just Pittsburgh's uneven geography, I don't really care. I don't really want to walk on ground that might landslide.
I know. We really can't trust the infrastructure here. I mean,
what,
the bridge collapsed like a year ago? I'm good.
It's sketchy, yeah. So I would definitely not go. That's it for the Dixmont State Hospital. Thank you for tuning in this week to hear about our paranormal phenomenon. Tune in next week to see what we discuss next.